The night was cold, the sky dark with broken clouds, and the wind carried dust across the empty farmlands. In the silence of the fields, a shadow moved, small and trembling. It was not a wolf, not a thief from the towns, but an alien girl, her skin faintly glowing with pale blue lines, like cracks of light under dirt. She walked barefoot, every step heavy with hunger, her hands shaking as she held her empty stomach. She had been hiding in the ruined barns outside the human village for days. No one cared to look at her. No one gave her food. When she begged in the streets, people spat. Some threw stones. To them, she was nothing but a starving thief from the stars. But tonight, her body could not take it anymore. Her ribs showed, her lips were dry, and her glowing markings flickered weak like dying embers. The smell of bread carried in the wind. Her eyes followed it wide with desperation. It came from a farmhouse at the edge of the village, where a human farmer kept his barn full of grain and baked food. She knew it was wrong, but her stomach burned. She whispered to herself, "If I don't eat, I die tonight." The wooden door of the barn creaked as she pushed it slowly. Her body shook with fear, but hunger gave her courage. Inside, the smell of wheat and baked bread filled the air. She reached for a loaf wrapped in cloth, her thin fingers clutching it tight. Tears filled her eyes as she lifted the bread to her mouth. But before she could bite, a rough voice broke the silence. "What do you think you're doing?" Her body froze. The bread dropped from her hands onto the dirt floor. A man stood there, tall, broad shoulders, holding a lantern in one hand and a wooden staff in the other. The farmer, his eyes sharp like steel, his voice filled with anger. "You think you can sneak into my barn like a rat?" he said, stepping closer. The girl stumbled back, her glowing skin faint under the lantern light. Her heart pounded. She wanted to run, but her legs were weak. "No, please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I was hungry. I only wanted a bite." The farmer's grip tightened on his staff. "Hungry or not, thieves get punished," he said, his voice firm. He stepped closer, expecting her to run, but she did not. Instead, she fell to her knees in the dirt, clutching the bread she had dropped. "Please, don't give me to the guards," she begged, her voice trembling. "I'll pay you back. I'll work your fields by day. I'll do anything. Just don't throw me out." Her glowing eyes lifted to his face, desperate and wet with tears. Then, almost in a whisper, she added, "And if you want warmth at night, I'll stay by your side." The farmer froze, the words heavy in the air. He looked down at her, her body thin, her face young but worn by suffering, her glowing skin marked with strange, broken patterns. She was no ordinary thief, no criminal from the town, but something else, something abandoned. Her offer was not pride, but pure desperation. She had nothing else to give, nothing else to trade, only herself. The lantern light flickered across his face as his anger softened, but his eyes still burned with doubt. "What kind of creature are you?" he muttered. "To beg like this, to sell yourself for a crust of bread?" The girl lowered her head, tears dripping on the dirt. "A creature who doesn't want to die tonight," she whispered. For a moment the barn was silent, only the sound of the wind outside and the creak of the lantern chain. The farmer's chest rose and fell, his heart battling between anger and pity. He saw her trembling, weak arms, the way her glowing markings flickered faint like a candle near death. She was not lying. She truly was on the edge. Finally, he sighed, lowering the staff. "Get up," he said sharply, though his voice was less harsh than before. She looked up, afraid, unsure if he meant to strike her. But instead, he pushed the bread back into her hands. "You'll eat," he said, his voice rough but steady. "But if you stay, you work." Her lips parted, her eyes wide with disbelief. She clutched the bread, nodding quickly, her tears falling freely now. "Thank you. I promise I'll work. I'll do anything." The farmer turned away, his lantern casting long shadows on the barn walls. He muttered to himself, "I must be a fool." But deep inside, something stirred, a small spark of pity, maybe even something else. The alien girl ate the bread slowly, every bite like life returning to her. Her glowing skin pulsed faintly brighter with each swallow. She sat in the barn corner, watching the human farmer, as if he was more than just her captor. For the first time in many nights, she felt warmth, not from fire, but from hope. Yet the farmer knew this was only the beginning. The town would not stay quiet. The guards would not forgive. Keeping her was dangerous. Helping her was madness. But as he looked at her thin form curled in the corner of his barn, he knew he could not turn her away. The hungry thief had made her offer, and against his better judgment he had accepted. The night grew colder outside, but inside the barn, a fragile bond had begun. The morning sun rose over the fields, painting the sky in soft orange. The human farmer stood at the edge of his land, a wooden hoe in his hand, his eyes scanning the long rows of soil. Behind him, the alien girl followed slowly, her glowing markings faint in daylight, hidden beneath the dirt and torn fabric she wore. She had eaten the bread last night as if it were her last gift from the world, and though her body was weak, her spirit carried something new, a strange kind of hope. The farmer watched her stumble on the soft ground, her feet bleeding from sharp stones, yet she did not complain. "You said you'd work," he muttered, his voice low. "So let's see if you mean it." He pushed a heavy basket toward her filled with seed sacks. "Spread them down the row, no skipping, no tricks," he ordered. The girl nodded quickly, her thin hands trembling as she lifted the sack. The weight nearly pulled her down, but she bit her lip and forced herself to move, dropping seeds carefully into the earth. The farmer kept his eyes on her, expecting her to collapse, to give up, but she did not. Every time her knees buckled, she straightened her back. Every time her breath grew short, she whispered to herself, "Don't stop. Don't stop." Her glowing markings flickered faintly brighter under the sun, as if her body drew strength from sheer will. Hours passed, the air hot with dust. The farmer worked alongside her in silence. From time to time, he glanced at her face, pale and sharp, eyes filled with stubborn fire. She was not like the thieves he had caught before, not lazy, not careless. This one worked as if her life depended on each seed she dropped into the soil. By midday, sweat ran down her face, mixing with dirt. Her hands bled from carrying the basket. Her breath came in gasps. Finally, her legs gave out, and she collapsed onto the ground. The farmer rushed forward, annoyed yet strangely worried. "I told you to work, not to die in my field," he growled, pulling the basket from her hands. The girl looked up at him, her lips trembling. I can do more," she whispered, her voice weak. "Please don't throw me away. I promised I would work." The farmer stared at her, his chest heavy. For a moment, he wanted to shout at her foolishness, to tell her she was nothing but trouble. But when he saw the fear in her eyes, the way her body shook as if she expected a blow, his anger cooled. He crouched down, offering her a water jug. "Drink," he said roughly. "You'll be no use to me if you collapse like this." Her glowing hands trembled as she took the jug, drinking deeply, her throat moving fast. When she finished, she pressed the jug to her chest like it was a treasure, whispering, "Thank you." The farmer stood again, his eyes on the far hills where the town walls rose. He knew the risk, knew the whispers would start soon. Humans did not take kindly to aliens on their farms, especially those accused of theft. But something in the girl's stubborn fight touched a place he thought was long dead. She was desperate, but she was also strong, and strength was rare in these lands. Later, when the sun began to set, the farmer lit a fire outside the barn. The girl sat close, wrapping her thin arms around her knees, her eyes watching the flames with silent wonder. The shadows danced across her glowing skin, making her look like a spirit from old tales. He broke bread in half, handing her a piece. She hesitated, then bowed her head and took it, eating slowly, as if afraid it might disappear. For a long time, neither spoke. The only sound was the crackle of fire and the chirp of night insects. Finally, the farmer broke the silence. "You promised me more than just work," he said, his voice careful, his eyes fixed on the flames. Her face turned red beneath the glow of her markings. She looked down, her voice soft. I meant what I said. I have nothing else to give, no land, no coin, no family, only myself. The farmer clenched his jaw, uneasy with her words. He was no stranger to loneliness. His house was empty for years, his wife long buried, his fields worked by his own hands alone. But this girl was not a woman of his kind. She was something different, fragile, desperate, yet strangely brave. He turned to her, his voice firm. I didn't save you for that. I let you stay because I wanted to see if you'd keep your word. If you'd truly work. Her glowing eyes lifted, surprise softening her features. You don't want me for that? She asked, her voice trembling. He shook his head, looking back at the fire. I want you to survive. Nothing more. Nothing less. If you earn your place, you can stay, but you'll do it with sweat, not with shame. Her eyes filled with tears, not of fear this time, but of something else. Something close to relief. She whispered, No one has ever said that to me before. The farmer did not answer, but in his heart he knew something had changed. He had not just taken in a thief, he had taken in a soul that clung to life with claws and fire. As the night deepened, the wind carried distant voices from the town, rough laughter and cruel words. Rumors were already spreading, danger already growing. The farmer stared into the fire, knowing the bargain he had made was heavier than dirt. The girl beside him hugged her knees, whispering prayers to stars that no longer answered. She had stolen bread, but what she gained tonight was far greater. Something fragile, something dangerous, a chance, and both of them knew the bargain. In the dirt was only the beginning. The fire cracked softly in the dark, throwing sparks into the night sky. The human farmer sat on one side, his arms crossed, his face hidden in shadows. On the other side, the alien girl crouched close to the flames, her glowing markings flickering with the light. For the first time in many days, warmth touched her skin, not just from the fire, but from something deeper, the quiet safety of being allowed to stay. The barn behind them creaked with the wind, the smell of earth and wheat filling the air. She held her knees, rocking slowly, her eyes fixed on the flames. Every time she blinked, memories rushed back, the screams of her people, the smoke of her burning village, the heavy steps of raiders. Her lips parted, but no words came. She wanted to speak, yet her voice carried too much pain. The farmer broke the silence first, his tone rough but not unkind. You worked hard today, harder than most men I've hired, he said. She looked at him surprised, then lowered her eyes. I only worked because I had no choice, she whispered. If I fail, I die. If I stop, I disappear. The farmer poked the fire with a stick, sending sparks into the air. Everyone has a choice, he said slowly. But you chose to stay. Even after I caught you stealing, you could have run, but you didn't. Her chest rose and fell, a bitter laugh escaping her. Run to where? The town spits on me. The guards hunt me, the stars. They don't answer anymore. The farmer's eyes narrowed, curious now. You speak of stars like they were once yours. Her glowing eyes met his for a brief moment, then looked away. I was born under a different sky far from here. My people traveled, traded, lived among light, but then the raiders came. They burned our ships. They chained our families, and those who escaped were hunted like animals. Her voice shook, but she kept speaking, as if the fire pulled the words from her. I was small when it happened, my mother. Pushed me into the woods, told me to run. I ran and I never saw her again. Since then I wander, taking scraps, hiding, waiting for the end. Her hands trembled as she pulled her thin cloak tighter around herself, her glowing lines pulsing faintly. I am the last of my blood, maybe the last of my kind, she whispered. The farmer listened in silence, his jaw tight. He had known hardship. He had buried loved ones, but the weight in her words was heavier than soil, heavier than stone. The firelight softened his gaze, though his voice remained steady. Then why offer yourself so cheaply? He asked. If you are the last, why not hold pride? Why not fight to live with dignity? She lifted her face slowly, her glowing eyes shimmering with tears. Because dignity does not fill the stomach, she said softly. Pride does not keep you warm at night. When you are starving, when you are cold when no one calls your name, you give whatever you must, even if it is yourself. The farmer turned his eyes back to the fire, his heart heavy. He had thought her offer in the barn was shameless, but now he saw it for what it was. Not shamelessness, but despair. The silence stretched, broken only by the fire's crackle, until the girl spoke again, her voice trembling but firm. You did not take me as I offered. You gave me work instead. That is more mercy than I expected from a human. But mercy is dangerous. The others will not forgive you for it. The farmer's brow furrowed. What do you mean, others? She turned, pointing toward the faint lights of the village on the horizon. They saw me before when I begged in the market. When I stole scraps, they shouted, they cursed. And now, they will whisper that I am with you. They will come. Not just for me, but for what they think I am worth. The farmer's grip on the stick tightened. Worth? You mean to sell you? The girl nodded, her voice low. There are places, far worse than hunger, where people like me are taken, not for work, but for pleasure, for cruelty, for sport. If they drag me there, I will not return. The fire popped loudly, throwing a shadow across the farmer's hard face. He looked at her, this fragile creature who glowed like broken light in the dark, and felt a storm brewing in his chest. She was right. The whispers would grow, and danger would soon walk onto his land. But as he stared at her, shivering in the firelight, he knew he could not turn her away. He rose to his feet, his figure tall, against the stars. If they come, he said firmly, they will find I am not so easy to break. The girl looked up, her lips parting, a tear sliding down her cheek. You would fight. For me? She whispered. The farmer turned toward the dark fields, his hands clenched at his sides. I don't know why, he admitted, but yes, I would. Her glowing lines pulsed brighter, as if her body remembered what hope felt like. She hugged her knees tighter, whispering into the fire. No one has ever said that before, not since my mother. The night grew colder, but the fire burned stronger. In its light, two souls sat side by side, bound not by blood, not by duty, but by a fragile thread of trust. And though the stars above gave no answer, in the silence of the fields a promise was made, a promise that would soon be tested, when whispers turned to footsteps and footsteps turned to chains. Morning light touched the village roofs with gold, but the air carried something colder. Whispers, faint at first like the rustle of dry leaves, began spreading from door to door, from market to well. The alien thief, the glowing girl, was no longer hiding in the shadows. She was seen near the farmer's land, eating bread, working his fields, sitting by his fire. And to the people, mercy was a dangerous thing. In the marketplace, a butcher leaned close to a merchant, his voice low. He keeps her in his barn. I saw her with my own eyes. The merchant frowned. That thing should have been driven out, not fed. Another man, listening, spat on the ground. Alien. Thieves bring trouble. If he shelters her, he's no better than her. The whispers grew louder, thicker, crawling through every corner of the village like smoke. By the time the farmer walked into town for supplies, he felt the stares. Men paused in their work. Women pulled their children close. Voices fell silent as he passed. He kept his head high, his hands firm on the sack of grain he carried. But inside, he felt the weight of their judgment. When he reached the blacksmith's stall, the man folded his arms, his eyes sharp. I hear you've taken in something not human, he said coldly. Is that true? The farmer's jaw tightened, his voice steady. She works my fields, she earns her bread, that is all. The blacksmith sneered. You should be careful. People are saying she offers more than work, that she warms your bed as well. The toe. Farmer's fist clenched, his anger hot, but he turned away, refusing to feed the gossip. Still, the words followed him like flies, crawling in his ears. That night, when he returned, the alien girl sensed it. She looked up from the corner of the barn, her glowing eyes searching his face. You heard them, didn't you? She whispered. He did not answer, only set the grain down with more force than needed. Her shoulders sank, her voice trembling. They will not stop, I told you. Their whispers always become threats, and their threats always become chains. The farmer sat heavily on the wooden stool, his face shadowed in the lantern light. "Then let them whisper," he muttered. "This land is mine, not theirs. No one decides who I keep here but me." The girl's hands twisted in her lap, her glowing lines pulsing faint and uneven. "They will come not with words, but with rope and knives they will take me, and if you stand in their way they will hurt you too." The fire crackled between them, the silence thick. The farmer studied her, thin, fragile, yet her eyes burned with a strange strength. "You would rather I throw you out?" he asked finally, her head lowered, her voice breaking. "I would rather leave than see you broken because of me. You've given me more kindness than anyone since my mother. I can't let you pay for it with your blood." But the farmer shook his head. "You are not leaving, not unless I say so." His voice was firm, his eyes unyielding. "You work, you stay, and I'll deal with whatever fools come to my land." For a long time she said nothing, only looked at him with wide, tearful eyes. She had begged. She had stolen. She had run. But no one had ever claimed her safety like this. Her heart ached, torn between gratitude and fear. At last she whispered, "Then I will fight too if they come for me. I will not go quietly." The farmer's lips twitched into something between a frown and a smirk. "You barely stand after a day in the fields. You think you can fight grown men?" But her glowing eyes shone steady. "If my life is to end, I would rather end it resisting, not chained." That night, as she lay curled in the hay, she dreamed of chains rattling in the dark, of voices calling her worthless, of hands pulling her away. She woke with a cry, sweat running down her face, her markings flaring bright with fear. The farmer, awake by the fire, turned sharply. "Another nightmare?" he asked, his voice low. She nodded, trembling. He said nothing more, only pushed the blanket toward her, his gaze soft despite his rough tone. "Sleep, girl, you'll need your strength." But strength alone would not be enough, because the whispers in the town had already turned to plans. In a tavern at the edge of the village, 3 men leaned over mugs of bitter drink, their voices dark. "She's no thief. She's a prize. Do you know how much a creature like her would fetch in the border markets?" One hissed. The second man smirked. "Enough to buy half this village, and the farmer can't keep her safe forever." The third slammed his mug down. "Tomorrow night, we take her. He can't fight all of us." Back in the barn, the alien girl lay awake, listening to the wind rattle the wooden boards. Every sound made her flinch, every creak felt like footsteps drawing near. She hugged herself, whispering prayers in a tongue the farmer did not understand. Outside, the farmer kept his hand near the old iron staff resting against the wall, his eyes never fully closing. He knew danger was coming. The girl had warned him, and he could feel it now, like thunder rolling before the storm. And though neither spoke it aloud, they both knew the next night would not be quiet. The whispers had turned into promises, and promises of men often ended with blood. The night fell heavy over the Way farmlands, the wind sharp and restless. Dark clouds rolled across the sky, hiding the moon, carrying the scent of rain. The farmer stood at the edge of his barn, lantern in hand, eyes scanning the fields. He felt it in his bones. Tonight would not pass quietly. Inside, the alien girl sat close to the fire, her glowing lines faint, pulsing with unease. She hugged, her knees, her eyes wide, every crack of wood making her flinch. When the farmer returned, she lifted her head, her voice trembling. "They're coming, aren't they?" He placed the lantern down, his grip tight on the wooden staff he carried. "Yes," he said simply. "And if they think they'll drag you from here, they'll bleed for it." The girl's throat tightened, fear and gratitude clashing in her chest. She wanted to tell him to run, to let her go, but the words stuck. He was too stubborn, too strong, and somehow too willing to fight for her. She pressed her hands together, whispering, "Then I'll stand with you." The farmer shook, his head, his voice rough but steady. "No, you stay inside. I'll deal with them. That's my choice." The storm broke with the sound of boots. From the dirt road came figures. 3, no, 4 men, their shapes lit by weak torches. They moved like wolves, hungry and sure of their prey. The farmer stepped forward, staff in hand, his lantern. Swinging light across their faces, one of them spat, his teeth yellow in the glow. "You think you can keep her here, farmer? That glowing thief belongs to us now." The farmer planted his staff in the ground, his voice like iron. "She works for me, she stays with me, you'll not take her." The men laughed, cruel and sharp. "Do you hear him?" One sneered. "He thinks she's his woman now, a farmer claiming treasure that ain't his." Another lifted a rope, its loop ready. "She's worth gold across the border, enough to buy 100 farms. You think you can stand in the way of that?" The farmer's jaw tightened, his grip firm. "I said she stays." The first man's smile vanished, his eyes cold. "Then you'll die with her," he hissed, and rushed forward. The clash was sudden, fierce. The farmer swung his staff, striking the man's chest, sending him sprawling into the mud. But another rushed from the side, slamming into him, fists flying. The staff cracked against bone, but hands dragged at his arms, pulling, twisting. Inside the barn, the alien girl cried. "Out," her voice breaking. "Leave him! Stop!" She ran to the door, but one of the raiders grabbed her, his rough hand clamping over her mouth. Her glowing markings flared bright, struggling wildly, but the man only laughed. "She burns like a torch, perfect for the chains." He growled. The farmer roared, breaking free for a moment, his staff crashing against the man's back. The girl slipped free, gasping for air, but another rope snapped around her wrists. Yanking her to the ground, mud smeared her skin. Her glowing lines flickered weak as she screamed. The farmer tried to reach her, but a blow struck his head, stars bursting in his vision. He staggered, fell to his knees, his breath ragged. The girl's eyes locked on him, wide with terror. Don't let them take me," she begged, her voice breaking. But the men dragged her up, their laughter echoing through the storm. "She's ours now, farmer, go back to your dirt. She's more than you'll ever deserve." One spat. The rope pulled tight, her wrists bound, another rope at her ankles, and they began to drag her away. The farmer's chest burned, his body heavy, but his heart roared louder than the storm. He tried to rise, tried to fight again, but his strength gave out. He fell to the mud, his hand reaching toward her. "Don't," he rasped. "Don't take her." The last thing he saw was her glowing eyes, filled with tears and fire, as she was pulled into the night, chains clinking like thunder. When the storm passed hours later, the fields lay broken, mud soaking the earth. The barn door hung open. The fire inside burned low, and the farmer lay in the dirt, battered, his staff broken beside him. He forced his body to move, crawling, dragging himself to the door, his chest heaved, his eyes burning with rage. They had taken her, and he knew where. Men like that sold their prizes. He pushed himself upright, pain searing every bone. His land was ruined, his peace shattered, but he did not care. Somewhere out there she was in chains, terrified, waiting for a fate worse than death. And he swore, with blood on his hands and fury in his heart, he would not rest until he brought her back. The storm had ended, but inside him, a greater storm had just begun. The dawn broke red, heavy clouds covering the sky. The farmer rose from the mud where he had fallen, his body bruised, his head pounding, his clothes torn. The barn stood silent, its fire long dead, and the fields around him looked like graves. But none of that mattered because she was gone, dragged into the night in chains. He leaned against the doorframe, his breath ragged, his eyes sharp with fury. They had taken her like cattle, laughing, calling her prize and property. The memory of her glowing eyes, wide with terror as she was pulled away, burned into his chest. He spat blood into the dirt and whispered to himself, "They think I'll lie down and let them, but they don't know me." He searched the ground until he found the broken pieces of his staff. He left them behind, useless now, and instead strapped a short axe to his belt. It was not a soldier's weapon, but the tool of a farmer, heavy and sharp enough to cut rope, wood, or flesh. He filled a pack with bread and water, tightened his boots, and stepped into the fields. The wind carried the faint marks of their trail, footprints pressed deep, rope fibers torn, drops of blood where she had fought. He followed with the patience of a man who had hunted wolves before. Only this time it was not wolves he was after, but men. Through the fields and into the low hills he tracked them. The sun climbed high, beating on his back, but he did not slow. Every step carried the same thought. She is alive. She is waiting. She is calling for me. When he reached the old quarry near the border path, he found signs of them. A dead fire pit, empty bottles, the remains of laughter left in the dirt, and beside it rope fibers glowing faint with her light, her markings burned even into the strands. His jaw clenched, his fists tight. They will pay, he muttered. As the sun fell, he moved into the narrow canyons. From far off he heard voices, cruel and careless, men drinking, boasting. He crept closer, pressing against the rocks until he saw them. 4 men sat around a campfire, smoke curling into the red sky, and near them, bound and gagged, the alien girl knelt in the dirt, her glowing markings weak and trembling. Chains clamped her wrists, her ankles, her neck, dragging her like an animal. She swayed in exhaustion, but when she lifted her head, her eyes still burned, searching, waiting. The farmer's chest filled. With fire, his blood hot. He had no armor, no army, only himself. But that was enough, because he was not fighting for coin, not for pride, but for her. And men who fight for love, for mercy, for something greater than themselves are not easy to break. He moved when the night deepened, silent as the wind. The first man never saw him coming. The axe handle cracked against his skull, and he dropped, like a sack. The second spun around, shouting, but the farmer swung again, the blade sinking into his shoulder, sending him screaming into the dust. The others leapt to their feet, one grabbing for his knife, another reaching for the girl. "Farmer!" The raider spat. "You'll die for this." But the farmer's rage was a storm. He fought like the earth itself, fists, axe, even stones torn from the ground. Every blow was for her cries. Every strike for the chains they had dared to place. The girl struggled against her bonds, her glowing lines flaring bright as she tried to break free. Her muffled voice cried out through the gag, her eyes locked on him, begging, warning, pleading. One raider seized her arm, dragging her up, knife pressed against her throat. "Stop or she dies," he snarled, his breath sour with drink. The farmer froze, his chest heaving, sweat and blood dripping down his face. For a moment, silence filled the canyon, the fire crackling between them. Then the farmer's voice cut through the dark, low and steady. "You kill her, and you'll never leave this canyon alive." The raider's hand shook, his eyes flickering with doubt. In that moment, the farmer hurled his axe, spinning through the air. The blade struck true, burying itself in the man's arm. He screamed, dropping the knife, releasing her. The girl stumbled forward, chains clattering, falling into the dirt. The farmer rushed in, fists and fury, until the last man fell silent. Groaning in the mud, breathless, the farmer dropped to his knees beside her. Her eyes were wide, tears streaking her dirt-stained cheeks. He pulled the gag from her mouth, and the first word she gasped was his name. "You came," she whispered, her voice breaking. I thought I would never see you again." He gripped the chains, pulling, twisting, his hands bleeding against the iron. "They will not keep you," he growled. "Not while I still breathe." He smashed the locks with the axe one by one, until the chains fell heavy into the dust. She collapsed into his arms, her glowing lines pulsing bright for the first time in days. Her voice shook, soft but steady. "I told you they would take me. I told you they would come. But you came back." The farmer held her close, his eyes sharp on the horizon. "They thought you were theirs, but they were wrong. You are under my name, my protection. No one takes you from me." The night air carried only the crackle of fire, and the groans of broken men. But inside the girl's chest a spark lit again, not of fear, but of hope. She clung to him, not as a thief, not as a slave, but as something far more. And the farmer, battered and bloodied, knew this was only the beginning, for the world would not forgive, the whispers would not fade. But tonight, in the fields of dirt and chains, he had chosen her, and nothing would take her again. The sun rose pale and cold over the fields. Light. Spilling across broken ground, the farmer walked slowly, his steps heavy, his clothes torn and blood-stained, but his eyes sharp and alive. Beside him, the alien girl leaned against his arm, her glowing markings pulsing softly with each breath. No longer chained, no longer gagged. She was weak, but free. Her face lifted to the dawn as if tasting it for the first time. They crossed back into his land, the barn standing ahead like a tired sentinel. Smoke from last night's fire still clung to the air and the silence of the fields pressed down. Yet within that silence there was victory, there was survival. The girl stumbled, and the farmer caught her before she fell. "You need rest," he muttered, but she shook her head, her glowing eyes steady. "No, I need to see that I am still here, that I still belong somewhere." But belonging was the danger, and they both knew it. For when they reached the farm, whispers were already waiting. The villagers stood at the edge of the fields, men and women, children clutching their mothers' skirts, all staring with cold suspicion. The butcher spoke first, his voice loud. "You fought men from our village for her, a thief, a glowing creature that should have been thrown out." The farmer's jaw tightened, his hand resting protectively near the girl's shoulder. "She is no thief now. She is mine. She works my land. And she stays under my roof." Murmurs spread. Through the crowd, harsh and bitter, the merchant shouted, "You shame us, farmer, taking her as your own. Will you call her wife next? Will you let her bear your name?" The farmer's voice rose like thunder, strong and unyielding. "Yes," he said, his eyes blazing. "If that is what it takes, I will. She is under my name now. She belongs to no chains, no whispers, no market stalls, only to the life she earns here." The crowd erupted, some with shock, others with fury. But none dared step forward. Not after hearing of the fight in the hills, not after seeing the blood on the farmer's clothes. He stood tall, his figure like stone, and beside him, the girl trembled, not with fear, but with something new, something she had long forgotten. Hope. Her glowing markings pulsed brighter, shining even in daylight. She turned to him, her voice breaking. "You would claim me truly, even knowing the cost?" The farmer looked down at her, his rough face softening for the first time in years. "I already did when I stood against them. When I broke your chains, I chose you, and I will not take it back." Tears streamed down her cheeks, hot against her glowing skin. She fell to her knees in the dirt, her thin hands clutching his. "Then I promise you this," she whispered, her voice shaking with strength. "I will give you more than work, more than warmth. I will give you loyalty until my last breath. I will never leave your side, not while I live." The villagers stared, uneasy, uncertain, their whispers loud, but their courage small. No one dared cross the farmer. No one dared touch the glowing girl now claimed by him. They turned away one by one, their mutters fading into the distance, and soon the fields were empty again, leaving only the farmer and the girl, standing in the rising light of dawn. The farmer pulled her gently to her feet. "You don't kneel for me," he said quietly. "You stand. You live. You belong here now." She nodded, wiping her tears, her eyes brighter than the sun climbing over the hills. "Then let me belong. Let me be more than a hungry thief. Let me be yours, not by chains, not by force, but by choice." He said nothing, only placed his hand on her shoulder, firm and steady. And in that silence, something unspoken passed between them, a bond stronger than rope, stronger than whispers, stronger than fear. That night, as the fire burned in the barn, the alien girl sat close, not trembling, not begging, but resting in peace. The farmer sat beside her, silent as always, but his eyes softer now, his heart no longer empty. She leaned her head against his arm, her glowing lines pulsing steady like a heartbeat. For the first time, she was not surviving. She was living, and though the world outside still whispered, though danger still lurked, though chains could always return, here on this farm under his name, she had found something greater than bread, greater than warmth, greater than fear. She had found a home, and the farmer who had once lived only for the soil had found a reason to fight, a reason to stand, a reason to believe that even in a world of cruelty, mercy could grow into love. The night closed gently around them, stars filling the sky, and under those silent stars, the human's choice and the alien's promise became one, a fragile flame that nothing could snuff out.